Mr. Patel, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Yeah, it's been very well. My wife's not very happy because you called me on a Saturday. We are a lot of
Uh,
millennials working, so we had a second Saturday off. Then we kept the second and third Saturday off because the median age of the people working in this organization is 26, 27 who want to really have weekend of their own. So we just started and you made me work today. So
no, you're going to make it totally worth it, right? I think this is a conversation that I was looking forward to, right? And that's largely because, with Creative New Tech, you've been an organization which has seen the evolution of Indian markets, in a possible. I think there are very few organizations that can really talk about the consumer revolution, right? You've been in the distribution ecosystem, of technology, around technology for the longest time, right? And like I said, the consumer behavior has changed, right? What we've seen is absolutely spectacular, right? So I think this becomes a very interesting conversation in that context, because I think the mindset has kind of changed, the ability to spend has changed. I think those last 2 years have been absolutely disruptive, right? I think we never kind of fathomed of an ecosystem which is as dynamic as the one we saw in the last 2 years, right? And this is here to stay. The other thing which also becomes important is that the organizational behavior is also changing, right? So while of course we talk about Creative New Tech as an organization internally, but I think you're also operating in a B2B environment, right? That's again, the behavioral tendencies and the decision-making tendencies, they have changed very well. Right? But before we do all of that, I'd love you to quickly introduce yourself and we dive into the session from there on.
So I am Ketan Patel, Chairman and Managing Director of Creative New Tech Limited. I and my wife, who we founded this company close to 30 years back, and did my engineering, was from a family of doctors, so everybody was a professional. I was kind of a black sheep who went into business. Was lucky, IT happened by chance because everybody at that point of time were doing IT and telecommunication. That was kind of the buzzword, right, at that point of time. So
right.
Did that and was lucky that survived the whole sine wave kind of the industry graph, and yes, we are doing well. To mention, I have two beautiful daughters, Niti and Twani. One is just now at 26, and the younger one is going to London School of Economics. So yes, proud parent also.
Phenomenal. So, like I said, right? I mean, this is a conversation that I'm looking forward to, right? Now, I want to start this conversation, with what has happened, right? We've seen a very, very different sort of an ecosystem, right? I think, when it came to the distribution, right, and especially for technology-related, all technology companies, right? I think, disruption in general went through a massive disruption, right? We from an economy which was, divided across many sets and subsets, right? There was a lot of, need for a very, very strong physical presence. We completely transitioned into being a very digital first economy, right? And that's a trend here today. I'd love you to, start this conversation with, what's been your observation, what's been your understanding, right? And what are some of the things that you think are going to carry from here, are going to become very foundational for India as an economy, and we become more connected, right? That's the underlying theme that at least I look at. Would like to hear from you on that.
So a couple of things. First of all, whatever happened in the pandemic year, a lot of kind of bad thing happened and people suffer. But two positive things which have really come out of this pandemic is, one is decentralization of power, right? So one is the corporate head office does not exist anymore, because the pandemic wanted that you give power to your people. Your regional offices suddenly became your power centers because you had lockdowns everywhere. Sometimes you could not import in Bombay, so you imported in Chennai. Sometimes you could not import in Chennai, so you imported in Calcutta. And the whole power center game which existed into a corporate mind was completely demolished in the COVID period. That's the first part. Second part, our government wanted digitization to happen in India. And if they would have spent millions and millions of dollars also, or rupees, they would not be able to attend the kind of digitization which happened in the last 2 years, right? Imagining that my mom and my mother-in-law sitting in different rooms, joining a Zoom meeting to play Antakshari or a Tombola, or watching their own content is unimaginable. Whatever we could have tried before the pandemic, this could not have happened, right? Today, Even my office boy goes on to a Zoom call, right? So that's the amount of digitization which has happened, and that's the positive from the pandemic, right? And as India, you know, right, we directly from without having a landline moved to a mobile, right? From 2G to before everybody has a 4G, we are going to move to 5G, right? Before we could have cars for everybody, most of people started flying because of our low-cost airlines and all that. So similarly, with the digitization and especially in the fintech sector, right? Money can flow today anywhere. Education today. So you will find so many cases that people are doing online courses at Columbia. They could not claim to even come to Bombay to study, and they are studying it for free, right? So India is changing in a way which nobody of us has imagined. And one is that it has democratized education for sure. It has democratized finance for sure. And it has democratized business for sure. Today, you could be in a place like Chittoor, you could be in a place like, say, Northeast somewhere. And you could be the biggest seller of a gadget, or the biggest streamer, or the biggest YouTuber. So all that has really kind of changed.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You know, some very interesting points that you highlighted, right? And especially on the consumer ecosystem, I think which is just so much more important. You know, when you talk about ability to buy power of consumption in any environment, right? Education, fintech, I think they've been massive evangelists, of this, aspiration that has gotten built in the last, 2.5, 3 years. Right? It always was, right? I think content just kind of blew it up. I'm going to come to that in just a bit, right? But I'd love to understand from many of these brands, right? And Creative New Tech has represented a lot of these brands, for the longest time, right? I'd love to understand, how has that relationship evolved, changed? Is there a structural shift that is coming in, where, brands have started to empower partners on the ground in a more meaningful way? Because India is a complex economy, right? That always used to be there, but I think there are certain sense of, and trends of homogeneity that are also coming in, right? Because, like I said, right, essentially everybody was glued onto same screens. Which meant that their consumption habits at some point in time is going to start to converge, right? So what's happening on that front? I'd love to understand some of that.
So kind of brands have really evolved into their go-to-market strategy, right? And e-commerce, kind of people say it's a new form of business, but e-commerce has existed now 30 years, right? Amazon is more than 25 years plus as an organization. It's a 2-decade. So e-commerce kind of a buzzword is a new age business, but yes, it's transitioned into a various phases. And for the brand, the new thing is direct to consumer today, right? Every brand wants to, and it is not that the brand wants to cut any layers, but the brand wants to really understand if somebody is buying a, say, 1 lakh rupee TV or a large appliance, right? Who is the consumer? Why did he buy that TV? The brand had no access to that data before. With the D2C happening, that's happening. Second is, as I told you earlier, that for example, the firm believers of brick and mortar, right? Stores didn't have a choice. So they went digital so the customer could buy. But now you know how Indian businessmen and Indian people are, right? Once they find a success, they would like to really work on that. So when they saw that, yes, the products are selling, now when you go to a retail store, they want to work on an endless aisle. When I say aisle is that you may have catalog sales, may have innumerable numbers of products which are not selling at your store. The consumer in your store can order it on a screen and it could be delivered that day. The consumer also has the confidence that he is ordering from a physical store to get them. So a lot of our products, so consider a brand called Hyper Ice, right? It's a sports recovery brand. In 500 company in US, wanted to come to India, signed up Virat Kohli. There were certain channels who would have never dreamt of selling a Hyper Ice. But we said that why don't you list it online on your web store and see if it sells. And to their surprise, it sold like hotcakes.
Right.
Then they said that if this can sell, other products also can sell.
Right.
So now there is no fixed channel, right? A medical store will also sell a fitness device, will also sell a personal care device. And by the way, you should not be surprised if the medical store is even selling your earphones, iPod, accessories.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's the change. And the brands are really embracing that change very fast, because that's what they saw in US.
Right.
And now they think that because of the digitization, they thought this will take 10 years to happen. Now they are saying that this can happen in the next 24 months.
Interesting.
And single product brands, right, who don't have advertisement budget, who can't do big ad campaigns, right? For them, this digitization is a blessing, and we are seeing a lot of these brands really coming to India. And thanks to the government, right? The government overall, whatever we may have the feeling in India, but for abroad, India is shining, and they think this is the place where the future is. Everybody knows.
It's a last billion people market. I think everybody should be rejoicing. I think including all of us, right? I think there are temporary aberrations. I think with what we're kind of seeing in the economy, globally, I think it's a temporary aberration, right? I think eventually, like I said, I think from an aspiration standpoint, we have this soaring aspiration, right? I think education has kind of, empowered us in many ways, right? To at least prioritize and choose well, which opens up many windows for a lot of other players to sort of come in, right? Because there are going to be smaller niches that are going to get developed, and I think, that just is a massive possibility of sorts, right? So I'd love to understand this particular aspect, right? Now, you've been an organization which has been there 3 decades, right? It could sound very long, given what we've seen in the last 2.5 years. What are some of the pieces? So you've been pretty much a full stack player, right? When it came to being a partner for many of these large tech brands, right? What are some of the pieces that you, for example, included in the last 2.5 years, right? And you kind of alluded to it, right? I'd love to understand that, going forward, how is this relationship going to be? Right? Are you kind of shifting from being their representative and, say, in a way, being their on-ground partner in a market as complex as India is, to being more on the services side of it? Or does that relationship gets amplified because the number of services that you offer is much higher from what you did, right? How is that looking?
So I'll answer the question in 2 parts. One is that the India demographic, if you see, right, the millennials, our less than 35 years of age population, 70-75% of India falls below that. Right? These millennials want to live a connected life. They want to be a part of community. They want to share their life to everybody, right? They are on the Maslow's top end of the pyramid, right? They are on that self-actualization phase. Their roti, kapda, makan needs are over. Their security, self-respect, all that is now not there, right? And this is driving a lot of sales on the connected devices because they want to share them. Second, there's a study which says that by 2024, right, the brands which can give great customer experience will be the biggest differentiator rather than price and specification, right? So today, every product is a Me Too kind of a product, right? Your phone, my phone, your earphone, my earphone, even your bike, my bike will be the same, right? Only the brands which allow you to form a community, only the brands which allow you to share content, only the brands which gives you a great customer experience are the brands. And India's demographic is rightly suited for that, right? So you can see that in our marriages, right? The marriage is now the doula's entry, the doula is coming on a car and the dulhan is coming on a horse, right? Or she's coming on a tractor. So it's all about customer experience.
Right.
And at Creative, we have worked really hard to, from a box moving company, change into a company which can give great customer experience. So how can you give a great customer experience? One, we have to be present across India. You should have the skill set. So as today, we are participating in the health exhibition IHFC Delhi for HyperEye. Today my team is at Tadoba doing a safari for Olympus. Today my team is at some mall doing a tech event with somebody, right? And people in India want content which is India generated content, authentic content. It They want to buy, say, a camera for sports, but they don't want to see the content that somebody's skiing. They want to actually see that somebody is running a marathon, somebody is cycling, somebody is catching the local train in Bombay. That's the content which resonates, right? So if that's what the consumer wants, and that's what is going to be the brand differentiator. So that's how, as a company internally, we rejigged ourselves, right? So we said that our median age in the company should be around 32 years, because that's how the millennials think. That's the first part. And that's why the Saturday holidays and the Sunday holidays and the work from anywhere culture came, right? During the COVID, as I told you, that the headquarters, corporate head office all got demolished because we could see that there were so many lockdowns. So we had 14 warehouses and 1 distribution center out of Bhiwandi. During the last 2 years, we now have Chennai as our distribution center, Calcutta as our distribution center, Delhi as our distribution center, Bangalore. So we went closer to the ports. Now we have an AI running which really predicts that which place is going to sell what, and you get your containers at that place, right? First, to get a container on a ship, you used to take 6 days, and then another 20 days to come to India, right? If predominantly you are using China as your port, right? Today, to get the container is 45 days. And then another 20 days. So your working capital cycle increase. So how do you then kind of lower it? So then you don't get material everywhere. You get material staggered at Calcutta, because from Bombay to Calcutta is again 7 days to ship the material. So a ship coming from China to Calcutta will come 4 days earlier, and the 7 days transit time plus the logistics volatility. So that became this. We started working in shifts now. So our warehouse was first open, say, fixed time from say 10 to 6. Now we open 8 to 8 because of the e-commerce thing. People are taking smaller deliveries. People are taking deliveries in batches, right? And the customer delight is not about getting the deliveries in 3-4 days time. Now the customer delight is getting the deliveries in 3 hours, right? So that's also kind of working well for us. Now our attendance is digital. Now everybody does not need to come. So still we have not quite really embraced work from home, but we have embraced work from anywhere. So you need to be at a client's place at a certain time, but you don't need to come to the office that much. So very interesting. That's also kind of working well with us. On the talent front also, we are getting very, very good talent the moment we started work from India. Because you had chartered accountants, you had company secretaries, you had salespeople who wanted to devote time to their babies, to their families. Now they can really kind of, because traveling was an issue. So that's kind of also
very interesting. Very interesting. You know, Mr. Patel, there are a bunch of things that you highlighted on the enterprise front, right? Now, I'd love to talk to you about that, right? I'm going to come to that in just a bit, right? There's a very important point that you make in your current, your answer, right? And that is essentially around this entire planning of logistics, right? And how it has to sort of move, right? Now, one thing that has come in, and I think you possibly you have a vantage point, right? In terms of giving us that sense, right? Is that last 2 years we've been consuming a lot of content, right? In a way, our aspirations. There are fads which are going to fly faster, right? So while there are aspirations, right? These are not aspirations which are consistent in nature when it comes to buying of product, right? Our preferences are going to change very, very quickly, right? When you look at, say, some of the Indian brands, for example, Port, right? I've been a big fan of. When you look at them, they're very quickly introducing and reintroducing a lot of newer products, right? Now, there are 2 or 3 complexities that are coming into this equation, right? One is that you necessarily don't know for how long is a certain product going to fly, right? Until the other product replaces it. That's number 1. Number 2 is that this demand could be very, very spread out, right? It's partially spread out. You don't know which is going to, what demand is going to come from where. And third is what content influences which user, right? And this is like literally an uncharted sort of a zone, right? I mean, irrespective of whatever we do, say from an AI standpoint, or whatever we do from say machine learning or whatever, right? This is something we really, you cannot map out in first, right? Because there are a lot of cultural aspects, a lot of those things that start to come in, right? Now, this is a very, very complex environment for any brand whatsoever, right? Not just say within the tech and the gadget space, I think it's something which is pretty much all across, right? Tech and gadget space is slightly still better because you have certain standardization, certain homogeneity. For example, a processor will be a processor, right? I think design could have a variance. So there's a little bit of a consistency that you can see as far as that front is concerned, right? But it's a very, very dynamic situation, right? And from a logistical standpoint, it's a nightmare. Would love to understand, how is it that you're addressing the influence today? I know there is no definitive answer to this. There's no definitive matrix to it. But what I have to understand in terms of how you, for example, internally when you're doing it with brands, right? How are you planning?
So a couple of things, right? First, let's simplify the whole thing, and then I'll come to the logistics. Kotler gave us the 4 P's, 5 P's of product, right?
Right.
Today's world, there are 3 C's, right?
Right.
Require authentic content. So content is the first C. Content creates community, so that's the second C. And then content and community will drive commerce, right? Right. So, like you said about Bose, or like how we are licensing for Honeywell today, we do a lot of audio in the Honeywell space. Right? We have to take care of the 3 C's, right? Mm-hmm. The content, the community, and the commerce.
Right.
And that's how our brand is looking at, right? Plus, one more thing is this generation is very, very conscious about the environment. Sure. So your green packaging, your recyclable stuff, all that comes into the picture. Right. But now, whatever you want to do, you will have to finally, you may sell digital, but you move products physical.
Sure.
Right? The business happens in the physical world. And that's where the current nightmare in logistics is there. Mm-hmm. You may have your product ready. China has been in lockdown for the last 2.5 years, right? Whether we like it or we not like it, China is the hub for electronics, as per our say. Right. Or it supplies most of the components. So you may have a kind of $200,000 car which is waiting for one chip which is not come from China. Or you could have a 54-inch TV sitting in your warehouse because the HDMI cables which go with that TV is just say a 300 rupee product, but your $1,000 TV is stuck because of that right? But one more thing, this disruptions have been there for 2 years. So smart companies then start working. So for example, for us, we had just-in-time inventory. Now we have called something called as just-in-time plus. The plus stands for the logistics delays, the container delays, the production delays, this. So so every company kind of had to take this call, whether they want to take a working capital hit or they want to protect their consumer and their baseline market. Right. So as a company, we said that the working capital may go for a toss because of the longer logistics cycle, the longer production cycle, the longer inventory cycle. But still, you don't want to get stock out, right? So instead of a 45-day inventory, now we plan for the 90-day. Right. Instead of planning 60 days ahead, we plan 120 days. Mm-hmm. After doing all this, after taking everything into this, still you may be in a stock out situation for a longer period of time. That's the first. So now we sell products in 29 countries, right? So Indian plug works only in 2 places, India and South Africa. Sure. Then you have the UK plug, then you have the European plug, right? Then you have the US plug.
Right.
So now what we started, instead of having 4 SKUs with different plugs, we said that let's take the call. Let all the 4 plugs be in one product.
Right.
Kind of you can move one product from one to other.
Sure.
From having an India-specific customer manual, you have a manual which has all the say 26 languages where you want to sell that.
Sure.
So that's the second thing. Third is companies really started looking at Make in India to kind of cut down on the side. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the HDMI cable, that component could kind of jeopardize your whole inventory. So you kind of start making HDMI cables in India. So that works well for you, right? So that we started doing. Uh, Now, because there is still a latent consumer demand, and unlike accessories, in larger appliances, you don't have so many SKUs, right? The company you mentioned, both may have almost close to 3,000 SKUs. So, because then you have a headphone which has 4 colors, 7 colors, 8 colors, so all that becomes a problem. In that, then the online thing starts helping. Right? Because if you want to go to a physical store and you want to sell, say, a pink color headphone to, say, the people audience, then you'll have to put it in all the 300 stores, suppose you have at Reliance. But today, if you just put that pink color SKU of the headphone on the Reliance digital store, then you may just stock it at 10 locations, and Reliance could do that. So, the hybrid form of delivery is happening. There's a new word which is called additional place of business. So more and more retailers are now making your warehouse as APOB, additional place of business. So they get an order and you ship, and the consumer gets the product the same day or in 3 hours or 4 hours. So instead of being a real transactional partners, everybody are now working in the true sense, right? Everybody's ERPs are getting integrated. Everybody is working on their processes. We are embracing the retailer's process. The retailer is also looking at our ordering process. Our systems are talking to each other. And I think in a couple of years from now, everybody would have a website, everybody would be on a platform, everybody would be a buyer-seller relationship. So today I may be buying from, I may be selling to a retailer, tomorrow I will start buying from the retailer because the platform is going to handle this. So anybody who does not move to a digital platform will finally not be in the business for sure in the next couple.
Interesting. You know, Mr. Patel, I have a slightly contrarian point, right? Now, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think digital solves for a lot of this, challenge, right? And I think the working capital getting stuck, right? Because as a business, that and over a period of time, that becomes your largest sort of a leakage point of sorts, right? Not a leakage point, but I think you have that. You're running a certain risk, right? Which I think is just brings in so much more inefficiency in the process. And I think digital just kind of solves that in a beautiful way. Completely agree with you on that one, right? Now, but Mr. Patel, when you talk of India, right, especially when you talk about tier 2 and tier 3 India, right? Now, earlier in the conversation, you alluded to education, right? And how education kind of changed the entire, possibility of consumption, right? And I completely agree as far as that point is concerned, right? But we are still a market which is a trust deficit market, right? We're still a market which requires touch and feel, especially when you start going tier 2 and tier 3, right? So while there is this younger audience which is this phenomenal appetite to buy, they're still possibly employed, unemployed, in a gig economy where there's inconsistent payout, right? They are largely dependent on financing. Financing again is going through a troubled sort of a time of what we've seen the last 2.5 years, right? So while of course all of this at a larger level is magnanimous, it's beautiful. But I think when you talk about from an execution standpoint, a lot of this is much smaller than what we anticipated, right? Which essentially means that touch and feel, for example, for a qualified audience is going to be slim for, right? For the ones who have that cash to sort of buy. What's your sense of it, right? While I understand what you talk about, right? Experiential becomes important, right? What are some of the models that you see emerging when it comes to experiential, right? I mean, do you see more touch points coming in, which are going to be very quick experience centers, pods coming up, right? Like we saw for Amazon, right? In all malls, there are these small kiosks that have come up. What's your sense of it? How do you see it play out?
So, touch and feel is going to be the very important part, right? And when it comes to online also, something which is like, say, 2,500 rupees, 3,000 rupees, 4,000 rupees, you may buy it online. But if you want to buy, say, a product which is more than 5,000 rupees and you've not heard of that product, right? You've not heard of that brand, then you want to really go and see it in the touch and feel point of view. Now, the consumer is the king. So he may see a product at a retail outlet, may buy online. He may see the product online but wants to touch and feel at a retail store and take it up from there, right? So these are all the channels where you can really connect with the consumer. And then the consumer goes and takes it. So brands are also now looking at retail not just from a selling point of view, but from their experience center point of view, right? So say consider like a brand like Samsung. Samsung had their experience center today only in Gurgaon. right? Now they have one in Bangalore, they have one coming up in Bombay, right? Now why they require that? They are telling the consumer, you come to my experience center, see what my products can do. Or you go to my selected store, it has a small experience center built in, see what my product can do. And then you're free to buy it from anywhere. You buy it from the Samsung store, that's their D2C, or you go and buy it from the online Amazon, Flipkart, the marketplaces, or you go on to the Unicommerce platform or the Reliance who has physical and as well as digital store. You go and find that. So that's where it is happening. Second, lot of brands are promoting their own stores also. So the brand stores, because they want the customers to come and touch and feel the product. And as the product move away from say the 5,000 plus rupees, and if you are not a known brand, then obviously the touch and feel becomes very, very important. And brands are a lot of incentivizing a lot of partners to open up an experience store. So for example, within an organization, you had first 4 things, right? So say a large electronic company would have a mobile division separate, a large appliances division separate, a home appliances division separate, and accessories division separate. All these organizations are now moving to one single platform, where the large appliance dealer can also sell a mobile phone, can also sell accessories, right? And as the companies are reinventing their selling mechanism, the store's formats are also kind of changing now. And it will imperative be for a brand who wants to say have a market share of more than 5%. Will have to be in the physical space. Otherwise, they can never reach that
very interesting
sales. Because the Indian consumer in the village is not so tech savvy, is not so much risk taker. They want to feel, touch the product and then take that product, right? So you have to be present in the physical world to succeed in the digital world. That's how it is. For platforms is different because platforms are selling somebody else's brand. But a brand has to be in the physical world to succeed. And in India at least, and Xiaomi is the biggest example, right? Because an online company in China, it came here, conquered online, but their sales were still not like say 5, 7, 10% of the market. Right? Then they opened up their stores and exclusive stores, and that's how the sales.
Very interesting. Mr. Patel, I'm loving this conversation, right? For the perspective that you're bringing to the table, right? Now, one more question that I want to very quickly understand, right? From a distribution standpoint, and this is more, on the retail front, right? Now, so there are some very important points that you highlighted in the point that you made. What I want to understand is that, are we entering? So what we've also seen in the last, this period of COVID, right? Is a certain institutionalization which needs to be done, right? When you get into a more connected ecosystem, institutions fly, practices fly, right? Brands fly, unorganized players kind of get weeded out in the first, right? Because brands exude and communicate a certain trust, right? Now, we have in India, when you talk of retail, right? We talk about many of these, small retailers, right? And one of the points that you earlier mentioned, right? Who are selling multiple things, largely their advantage is proximity and relationship with the customer, right?
Yes.
A lot of that is going away, right? Do you see, so today, for example, given a choice, me, you, urban consumers will go to a Chroma and, will consume from a Chroma or a Tata Reliance store, and will go to largely all of these format stores, right? Do you see a very strong emergence across tier 2 and tier 3 of these large retail stores which are going to come in? And they're going to take a big pie out of, the smaller, retailers that we have, who are selling from very limited real estate. Second is, what does it do to the margins of distributors, right? Because, when you have that kind of a power and when you have that kind of a consumer funnel, your ability to negotiate and renegotiate your price points and your margins with manufacturers and distributors in the process is very, very right. What's your sense of how do you see that?
So a couple of things. First is to drive sales, and you had mentioned the part about affordability and finance in your previous, right?
Sure.
And yes, So because of the emergence of fintech today, right, you even don't need a swiping machine. Right? You could just get a link on your phone and you could just pay it directly from your to the customer. So affordability drives costlier products, right? The ASP, the average sales price of product goes higher and higher. So you want to buy a 10,000 rupee camera, I suddenly offer you an EMI and you buy a 20,000 rupee camera because you say 2,000 rupees every month I can afford, right? That's what. And brands have really worked very well. Plus the fintech sector has come out with immense number of products. So today, even the cost of reaching to the second tier, third tier, fourth tier consumer for an EMI is not so large as it was before, because you don't require a swiping machine, you don't require a point of sale. Everything can happen on your mobile phone or a WhatsApp or a Paytm or that kind of stuff. So that's one which is kind of growing that, right? Second is, yes, any business, right? So if you don't change for a smaller retailer or a larger retailer, you will finally perish because the consumer has evolved, right? The consumer is more of a prosumer today, right? So because you become a connoisseur of what you want to do, right? You have hobbies, you are doing a lot of stuff. So you require the retailer also to kind of engage with you in a conversation before you buy that product, right? And when an organization is large, right, they cannot offer more of a specialized, personalized service which a smaller retailer can. So what, in my viewpoint, is we will have, of course, the larger all India chains of stores like the Kromas and the Reliance will be there, but we would have regional specialty stores. And regional retailers who will also have a lot of dominance in their market, because they understand the culture very well, they know the local language very well, and they can really run their promos around the festivals which happen in that region, that areas also. That's one. Second, world over, everybody loves to be recognized, right? That recognition you will never have in a larger chain, right? And the flexibility after being recognized, right? You move into a smaller retailer and he knows you by name. He says, "Welcome, sir," and he said, "Your old phone working, and I will exchange it, and you can take it and pay later." And that payment flexibility, right? So, as the business evolves, we will see the smaller retailer becoming larger. If they don't become larger and don't embrace to the new thing, then they'll have to become specialists. They'll have to deal in much lesser product but become specialists. If they are generalists, they will perish. If they are specialists, if you want to be small, you become specialist, or you grow, right? In your region, don't try to grow across India. So that's the change which is going to happen. Coming to distribution margin, the question. I kind of say that a distributor is kind of staying in a rented house, right? And the landlord is the brand, right? And he gets to stay in the rented house till the landlord gets somebody who kind of pays higher rent, right? So if you are doing box moving, that's the analogy I would like to use, right? But the moment you become the extension of the brand, and you can do what the brands want to do in the market at a cheaper price, right? And plus, with the distribution, you also have amortization of the cost, right? Today, for any brand, the typical manpower cost would be 8% of their sales. And if you're building a brand, right? And for a distribution house, the cost would be 1.5%, right? Why the cost is coming 1.5%? Because the same guy who is doing logistics for, say, an X brand is also doing for another 4 brands, right? So the amortization sector also plays. So world over, distributors will continue to exist because we are the cheapest mode of getting the consumer from the factory to the last customer, right? So we can get our goods from the factory to much cheaper than the brand at the first one. Then we have a lot of flexibility also. because a brand requires a stable forecast, and if they work on a 6 month forecast, right? And if you move up on the 6 month forecast, there's still somebody who will absorb that. That's the thing, right? So yes, the AI is helping, planning is helping, but still a lot of things keeps happening, which by the distributor is like the sponge who can absorb that shock, right? And now more and more brands understand the value of distribution, and they try and protect the distributor, right? And ultimately in IT, if you see, the max margin is between 4 to 8%, and the brand will never be able to take the products to the people into that margin, plus credit risk, right? India being India, the score for somebody might be much low, and you could really take a credit exposure on them much higher. But that's your intelligence being into that market. Then the barter happens, right? The LG guy says, if a customer for Samsung will come, I will buy from you. And the Samsung guy says vice versa. If a customer for LG will come, I will buy from you. For that reason, the distributor will keep on existing, but the distributor, in terms of process, will have to digitize completely. Their systems will have to start talking to the brand system seamlessly. Then that would help. And the third part would be their GTM will be also kind of both digital and physical. So there is a new word, right? Digital, which is digital, which is physical, digital. So that's the new avatar of the distributor.
Super. Mr. Patel, I'd love to talk to you a little about enterprise, right? Now, I think that's another significant shift, right? And I think that's been a huge consumer, right? When it comes to everything electronics, right? Now, how is the newer ecosystem? How do you see the newer ecosystem? Because this is more distributed. This is going to be hybrid going forward, right? People are going to be working from pretty much everywhere. What's your sense of it? How do you see it, right? This is a very broken, demand of sorts, right? What's your sense of it? How do you see it, right? When you're working in a physical sort of environment, there are, like I said, right, there are certain processes, there are certain practices that are already established, right? For example, you want a certain laptop, you want certain ambience, you want a certain setting, right? You're going to have a requirement for printers, you're going to have a requirement for air purifier, right? There's a variety of things, right? That is kind of broken in many ways, right? There are certain products that will possibly not necessarily fly, right? Overall requirement for space is going to shrink going forward, right? Enterprise is very, very important because that just helps you move much faster, right? A liquidation of inventory for again is just so much more improved in that environment, right? Working capital requirements, delayed payments and all that. I think those are risks. I'm not gonna skip that, right? But I'm saying purely from a consumption standpoint, how is this? How do you see this particular piece play out in the next couple of years?
So, kind of the enterprise also would. So, for example, first you had, say, an office in Bombay, and it used to suffice the whole of Bombay.
Right.
Now you could have 4 offices also in Bombay. Right? So, enterprise also will be in 4 parts because if people are traveling from all that region, right? First that. Second, certain products like printing, which was kind of a shared resource, right? And you had large printers where the printing would happen, right? Now, if you are going to work at smaller places, the smaller printers would kind of suffer. Or probably you could tie up with somebody who is in that area who would help you with the printing because he has a large printer, right? So new models of business will emerge, right? And the new models of business would be rentals, kind of, because you don't know. And who knows today, for example, a co-working space, right? This is giving you space. Tomorrow the co-working space will start giving you all kind of equipments to do that, right? And third is you may get products as services, right? Because the employee is not coming and you can't do that amount of due diligence, right? So you may want to give a product on rent to him or a product as a service to him. You tie up with a service provider. So that could also kind of change a lot of thing into that space, right? So, for example, consider our case, right? In COVID, for some example, some of our products did extremely well, and some of the products did not do well. So, like our printers, which were used in manufacturing, did not do well. Laptops did expensively well. Tablets did expensively well. Monitors, for example, the monitors price double. Monitor was a dying category. People were shifting to laptop, but because of work from home, because of people glued to the screen for larger hours. A CEO today has a virtual conference room even in his house today. So he takes a webcam, he takes a monitor, he takes a proper chair. So all that is kind of now part of the standard perk. If the HR policies are good, they will make it a standard perk, right? You never had that you could kind of buy an office chair. But today it's a standard perk that if you're working from home, you can buy an office desk, office chair, you can buy a webcam, right? Plus, technology is really helping in getting the collaboration started. Right? Imagine us, this interview before 2 years, you would have insisted that come to my studio, we will have it there, right? And today we are having this virtually, and it's kind of face to face. And that taboo of me getting comfortable to you only when we meet physically is no longer existing because it's not there into that mind. And that's the whole modern enterprise going to be, the digital kind of enterprise. And the products also which will kind of help into us into that space will be there. That's what I think.
Amazing, right? Mr. Patel, we're towards the end of our conversation, right? It's been an absolutely spectacular conversation, right? I love some of some of the perspective that you brought to the table, right? I think a lot of pieces are still going to become clear as we go along, right? I think we come from a massively unorganized and a disconnected economy, right? To kind of now transitioning into a more connected play, right? I think a lot of this is going to become more predictable and more visible in next couple of years. Right? That's my sense, right? Mr. Patel, I'd love to understand some of the key challenges, right? Now, at a distance, as an observer, of course, we understand certain challenges that exist, right? And these are challenges of distribution, work capital requirements, consumer preferences, right? Now, at a distance, these are challenges that are visible. Right? I'd love to understand from you, as we move towards the end of the conversation, what are some of the challenges that you see emerging that are not necessarily visible to us on the outside? And when I say us, I mean many of the people who are not dealing with day-to-day, problems or grappling with day-to-day problems. Right? What are some of the challenges that you think are going to really define this industry going forward?
The first challenge is going to be that digital will become costlier than physical. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when I go to a large format retail store, the margin range from, say, depending on the product, say from 12% to 25%.
Sure.
Because now digital or the e-commerce thing is also legacy, right? 20-25 years. Sure. They have their own set of problems, right? Their employees have been working there for every year. They have been given a certain raise. They're going at certain time. So now to do the same work in the digital is still more optimized, but still because you get the customer data, you get the customer preferences, everything. But to sell digital today, the cost is close to 30-35% more than physical. That's the first. Right. Second part, there's a heavy dependence on reviews today. Right? Everybody wants to see the review.
It's transparent.
But 1 in 100% writes the review.
Right.
If I have to reach, say, a 3,000 review for a product, I'll have to wait at least 14 to 17 months for that product to become.
Right.
So, when digital came into the space, this were not the hurdle. You could have a review faster, you could have your product to the consumer in less than 10-12%, or in some cases even at zero cost because they were spending a lot of money. Right? Most of these digital companies are also gone public, right? So once you become a public company, suddenly PAD becomes the god.
Right. Right.
That's the thought, right? How many customers, what is the, all that
Right.
is not considered after a while, right? So, companies which want to take the digital route, the cost is higher. You can't escape the digital route because the new three C's are prevailing: content, community, and commerce.
Right.
So you have to take that route. D2C has their own problem, right? So I think more and more services will start happening, right? Distribution is kind of also people, because we move physical goods, they don't think it's a service. But what is distributor's job? To get the goods from the manufacturer or the brand to the retailer. That's the service it provides, right? Then it also provides the service of finance, the credit, the logistics.
Right.
For the distributor, it could be now D2C also could become a service, right? Because in D2C, most of the companies who do D2C, they don't have physical stores.
Right.
Here, because you are the distributor, you have the physical store. So you do the D2C.
Sure.
You do the fulfillment to the large format retail, right? And that. But for that, you have to have a digital. So I will invite you one time to our kind of meetings we have. Right? The younger generation, you say you want to double the growth, right? And when we say double the growth, immediately the elder generation says we'll open more offices, we'll employ more manpower, we'll take more distribution. That's the thought. The younger generation immediately says, okay, we will spend a lot of money on Google AdWords, we will increase our SKU count, let us connect our ERP with GeoMart's ERP. That's what kind of right? So that's also works kind of. So other than the challenges of cash flow, other than the challenges of that, the biggest challenge would be the skill set, because not many people have the right skill set, right? For example, if you want to harness an opportunity, you require three things. You require access to resources, that is money and all that. You require skill set, and then you require the right culture to kind of remain into that business, right? Keep your feet planted to the field. Skill set is a very scarce resource today. So India as a country has a lot of manpower, but the right skill set
is missing.
Yeah, that's the case. So in terms of challenges, getting the right skill set is also the biggest issue what we see, besides the other issues of system processes moving from just physical to that space.
Interesting. Mr. Patel, we are towards the end of our conversation, right? I think no conversation today can be complete with two things, right? What are the next 2.5 years like? I would have loved to ask you a 5-year question, but we're just in two dynamic times, right? And I'm saving some of this for our next conversation, right? Which we have hopefully soon, right? So what are the next 2.5 years like? That's number one. Number two, I'd love you to end this conversation with, this is more cliched, right? But some sort of a learning, right? Every entrepreneur has a journey, right? I think this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I have learned a lot, right? With the objectivity that you bring into the entire, the entire play plan that you have of sorts, right? Because, in a lot of other conversations that I typically have, right? People have a very clear, this is what we want to do in the next 2.5 years, right? I think the good part is that you're kind of dealing with a lot of that with a lot of patience, right? You're saying that, this is not permanent, this is not settled yet. Let's play by the ear, right? As it kind of evolves, and which is very heartening to see, right? And I think that's very different from a lot of that. So, I'm going to save some of this for the next conversation, but I'd love you to end this conversation with what are the next 2.5 years like for Creative New Tech, and a learning that you would want to share with many people who want to watch this. There could be professionals, there could be business founders, there could be entrepreneurs, startup founders. I'd love you to register that.
So a couple of things, the board. So knowing where to go is your journey I've done, right? So the board have been very clear that they want us to build the Honeywell business. And they want us that the Honeywell business becomes 30% of our overall business, because it's a licensing business which gives us top dollars, right? So they want us to first build the muscle on the Honeywell business, and once we do that, then probably do our own brand kind of stuff. So this is kind of the product to go to the market, right?
Sure.
Second is, as a company, as I said, that skill set is very hard to get, right? So as a company, we really want to invest a lot in the existing people so they can really upgrade their skill set, because if the existing people have the right skill set, we don't have to worry about the culture. Otherwise, culture becomes a problem if you expand faster, right? We have just expanded in the Middle East. We want to go to Southeast Asia because that's also kind of our kind of culture which exists there. So as a company, we really want to go there, right? And one of our so when you are somewhere in your life, and then what motivates you, right? So and for me and my wife, creating job opportunities for a lot of people, that's our motivation, right? So we want to, for the next 2.5 years, really work on that we can create more and more job opportunities for people, so they can also live a very good kind of life. So that's one part. In the pandemic, and you said that what is the message you would like to leave to the budding entrepreneurs, right? So a couple of things I will say. First is, the pandemic taught us that you are a student for all your life, right? Whatever you learn, you will have to kind of relearn again, right? So, and I am a firm believer that every process which you put into place becomes a bottleneck in the future.
Right.
Every good becomes the evil of the future, right?
Right.
So every 3 years you kind of rework all your processes, right? You dismantle everything and then rebuild it. Then that's how you innovate as a company, right? You become so you are the old company, but your processes are new, right? So that's how you become the new company. And the last part is persistent and self-belief, right? That is what will take you there. Discipline, of course, but if you don't have persistence and self-belief in you, right? Because everybody has his own opinion.
Sure.
And you may listen to everybody's opinion, you may learn from everybody's opinion, but you should have self-belief in yourself that what you started, you will be able to complete that, right? So I don't have kind of some big words to say, but I'm saying
I think they're very meaningful. I think
persistent.
I think there's this. The depth is important. I think words is just a channel to sort of communicate. I think through this course of conversation, and maybe people who want to be watching this, Mr. Patel, I think they'll realize what you're saying, right? And the meaning of it, as they listen to this entire conversation. So it's been absolutely spectacular to host you here at Asiatic Journal. There are many things that I've learned in the process. I think one thing is objectivity, right? I think the last statement that you made, right, which is very, personally it stayed with me, and it's going to stay with me, right? Is that, your good today is going to become your evil tomorrow, right? So you have to continuously be in that zone of, assessing it, evaluating it, re-engineering it, which is so much more important. It's been, like I said, a spectacular conversation. Thank you so much for doing that. I look forward to having you with us much sooner.
Sometimes physical world with a cup of tea, right?
Thank you so much, Mr. Patel. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for spending time on a Saturday. Thank you.